Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by Zorro.com. Zorro.com is where you'll find everything you need for business of any size and almost any industry. They have tools, equipment, and supplies for everything you need, whether you need stuff for industries like electrical, plumbing, contracting, manufacturing, or more. Zorro's got it from brands you know and trust. And Zorro.com offers amazing customer service from real people based in the U.S. Visit Zorro.com/watch, that's Zorro.com/watch, in all lowercase letters to sign up for Z-Mail and get 15% off your first order. Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening to today's episode of The Watch. Great show today. Andy called in from New Mexico to talk a little bit about the Emmys, which was pretty enlightening. I thought Andy had a lot of really good points about that. So it was cool. I hope you guys are all investing your winnings properly from my Ozark tip. I know it didn't win Best Drama, but, I try to help you guys out where I can with my winners. But that's not the big news. The big news is that today on The Watch, J. Smith Cameron called in, and you know her and love her as Gerri from Succession. She is a delightful performer, one of the standouts on this amazing show, and she was nice enough to call in and chat a little bit about the making of Succession and how she watches Succession and how she processes the show with everybody else. And then after Jay's interview, we have Jason Concepcion and me talking about last night's episode of Succession with the audio from Number One Boys. So thank you so much for listening to The Watch. Let's get into the show.
I need support staff to clear the room.
Stand up and walk, now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me on the other line, constantly rewriting himself, it's Andy Greenwald!
Hey, buddy. Welcome back.
What's up, man? Welcome back to you. We haven't heard from you in a while on The Watch podcast.
Is that true? Have I been quiet?
I don't think we've done anything since we ran the New Mexico pod. So I haven't talked to you since
That's
then.
true.
Yeah.
Well, you were in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
You've been all over the place. I'm right here. I'm still here, baby.
Oh, you're always ready to talk about the latest news in pop culture, and you're always ready to give thoughtful critiques of the most pressing television shows.
Listen, I am where I have been since late May. I am in a trailer parked in a disused rail yard somewhere in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I belong.
That's like,
where I feel very comfortable.
I'm surprised Pinkman's not just sitting right next to you. Is that where El Camino ends? Is on the set of Briar Patch?
Something has ended here, and it very well may have been a life. I should say that we're filming the finale. This is our last week of production. It's very exciting. I did, just as we were about to record, get a text from set that said, "Can Brian change a line?" So if there are any wild inconsistencies in this crucial scene, blame the podcast. But otherwise, okay.
If this is where Briar Patch connects to the larger extended Bloodlines universe.
Oh, hey, we have an actor from Bloodline on our show, so we could always pretend.
Speaking of actors, so last night, wait, do you want to tell me a little bit about what's been going on? I want to get the update.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we should talk Emmys because Emmys happened last night.
Mm-hmm.
Just that, we're almost done, which is very hard to believe. We had the wrap party this weekend, and we actually had 2 wrap parties. On Saturday, we had the official wrap party at a sort of a bar type place, and it devolved into karaoke, which was quite impressive. Unsurprisingly, podcast favorite Jay Ferguson just crushed Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire. And the big surprise was not that Rosario is a good singer; it's that she duetted with our prop master on a Meatloaf song.
Oh wow!
So so anything's possible. But the thing that I wanted to let people know about was that that was Saturday, and then on Sunday we had a second event that Rosario very generously paid for and invited everyone to, which was like a second wrap party for crew and family at a place called Main Event. Now, I think people who are younger than us, perhaps more in touch with, fun, know about places like this. So it's a giant box off the highway. And inside of it, it's like a carnival, if you will, of television screens and pool tables and arcade games and an obstacle course and a bowling alley, a full bar, and a laser tag arena.
Is it like Dave and Buster's?
I guess it's like Dave and Buster's, but somehow it's open till 2 a.m. It was a lot.
When you say younger people, do you think that's what young people like to do? You really should watch Euphoria if you think that.
I was told by numerous members of the crew that this is something that they do here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I got to say, we may have been missing out because and longtime listeners know what a big fan I am of fun. Like I love to have fun. I love to get out there and mix it up. And I'll say that I played my first ever game of laser tag. Have you done this in your life?
Yeah, I have. You can imagine how seriously I take it. I'm like Benicio del Toro raiding a cartel mansion.
Your voice dropped 6 octaves when I asked you that.
I've played laser tag in earnest twice, and one time I basically reenacted Predator. I like covered myself in mud, and then I threw away my laser tag gun because I got primal with it.
So you were just coming up behind people and just cutting their throats with a fake plastic knife?
Yeah.
Like, I just think that it's interesting because
you don't hear a lot about laser knife. Nobody plays that.
No, that is the next chapter. I think that it reveals something about people's character, though.
Yeah.
Such as we're waiting in like the holding area for our turn to begin, our 15-minute round or whatever. And because our numbers were not robust enough, they let in another group of, I believe, primarily 11-year-olds. And I was immediately intimidated. I was just like, oh, this is over. Like these children will run riot on me. And Jay Ferguson would not allow that to happen and started attempting to lead our group in some sort of war chant against the children. And we walk in, and I'm completely confused. And I turn to one of our wonderful makeup artists, JQ, and I say, what team am I on? Because I guess it reveals when the game starts what team you're on. And she said, don't worry, you're on my team. And I said, thank you. Then she shot me until I was dead. I guess I regenerate, like you get
to come back. It's not real. Yeah.
So how would you guess, like you've known me for 23 years, what would you guess my style of combat would be?
Like a lot of like, how does this gun work while standing in the middle of the room and getting annihilated by people?
Wow. Okay. All right. I was going to say that you can't hurt my feelings. You did a little bit. No, what I did was I immediately ran up a ramp, found a very cozy corner, and then just crouched there. And every so often would stand up because the aforementioned Jay Ferguson, who was running around yelling freedom, he would just present himself as a juicy target, and then I would shoot him. But I never once left the corner.
It sounds like Jay and I play in a similar fashion. I also have played laser tag, where you think like, okay, we're gonna actually have like it's paintball without the paintballs, but so we're gonna take it super seriously, and then a bunch of 11-year-olds come in, and you're like, watch my 6! You go straight Ghost Prody on them. You just get all Rogue Nation.
You guys are slot receivers at heart. Like, you will sacrifice your body.
Yeah.
To the team. You will go over the middle. The thing is, I kept getting ambushed by 11-year-olds, and because I was really like, my head was not on a swivel, my heart was like, it was tense in there. So every time a child shot me, I cursed. Like, I yelled an epithet. Like, I feel like I was a really bad role model for these children who probably have said much worse things. Anyway, obviously Rosario won by like double the points of anyone else.
Did she really?
Because so you think that she hosted this because she is a kind and generous person, which she is, but also because she crushes at all games. Yeah, also she's been in Tony Scott movies, so she probably knows how to like handle herself on the field of combat. In all areas. So yeah, there was a moment where we're hanging around waiting for our laser tag turn, and I was like, "Hey, Coney Island, you want to toss a couple skee balls?" Because I figure that's like low intensity. She's like, sure, checking her Instagram stories, casually throwing 40s like they're nothing. Just effortless. I made the mistake of doing Pop-A-Shot next to her. I felt like I had a respectable number of baskets made. She had 55 points. That's high. At the end of it, to the point where she's going around telling everyone
Does Rosario want to play for the Sixers?
She's telling everyone a story about how a child at this amusement park place invited her to play a game with her. She was like, hello, kind celebrity lady, will you play this rhythm game with her? And she was like, sure. And then her mom videoed it because the girl was like really into this game. And Rosario just dunked on her, just defeated her handily. No sympathy.
Was the set a titter, a flutter about the biggest night in Hollywood for the TV industry over the weekend for the Emmys?
I would say no.
Yeah. The Emmys have an importance problem, I think. I love television. I don't think that the Emmys do a good job at capturing what's great about television or even celebrating it, which I know you've always sort of lightly mocked the Oscars for and just being like, movies. But, I don't even think they do a particularly good job doing that about TV on the Emmys, which I don't know. I wish I could get more excited about these things. I just can't. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem like Hollywood really understands how to celebrate its own product anymore, to say nothing of itself, which I think it's always going to spend a lot of money doing. It seems it's hard to get excited about this stuff.
I don't think it understands its product anymore. I don't think as an industry as a whole, they know what they're selling to people at the moment or how it's being perceived. And I think that was just sort of shot through the entire show and also shot through almost everything that's being written about or talked about right now. Just as a side note, there was a piece yesterday, this very strange, rapturous Maureen Dowd fan service interview with Bob Iger, the chairman of Disney.
For sure.
And in it, there were a lot of references to how everyone in Hollywood grudgingly adores him because he's standing up for the old storytelling houses against Netflix and Amazon, which is, okay. I guess maybe for shareholders that makes sense or nostalgists, but that's sort of a strange corner to stake out in general because it speaks to this divide between what entertainment has done for people and what it's doing now. And for me, I thought the Emmys last night were a very interesting transitional moment. It's been transitioning for a few years now, but this was the first time I started to wonder, have the Emmys become the Oscars? And what I mean is the Oscars have been just palpably fraught especially the last 10 years or so, between populism and the art house, right? Every year there are these conversations essentially
Would
boil
you
down
even
to
say the elites, Andy?
Sure. So it's like you versus Sean Fennessy, right? that it's a classic binary. But, it really boils down to why didn't The Dark Knight win Best Picture? And everybody's been freaking out ever since. Last night, and it spoke to the end of a moment that you and I podcasted through and championed, and for reasons that were not self-promoting, but it certainly made our podcast easier. We were very, very quick to jump on this bandwagon, this idea that TV had the stories people wanted to tell. TV was connected to whatever was left of the quickly fracturing monoculture. And, during the years when certainly Game of Thrones, which won for the last time last night, but had been winning, or even before that when something like The Sopranos or Mad Men won. Now, I'm not pretending that as many people watched Mad Men as watched multiple Emmy winner The Practice on ABC over a decade ago. But it did still feel like it kind of had its handle around the shows that people were excited to talk about or the people who were invested in the industry were proud of. Last night, to me, was the turn towards promoting things that are unassailably excellent, but also inarguably not mass culture, at least not yet.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's the problem. I mean, if they wanted to do mass culture, though, what would they be celebrating aside from Game of Thrones?
Well, that's the thing. I don't think they can anymore, but I do think it's a different vibe to be like, this is TV's biggest night, and we're going to celebrate the things that everybody's watching, like Game of Thrones. Or is the mission of the Emmys becoming Fleabag is the best thing that's going to be on TV in 2019, and we're going to celebrate it and give it the nudge into the larger glare of the spotlight that it deserves.
The Oscars is the winner's circle. The Emmys is the launch pad, right?
Well, but I'm saying that's the Oscars find itself in that position too now, right? Where Moonlight wins Best Picture, deservedly so. But afterwards, there's all this hand wringing about, well, who saw Moonlight and what are the Oscars for? Is it to celebrate the movies people went to see, like Avengers, or is it to celebrate the movies that they ought to be seeing? And it's this fork in the road where it becomes more the taste makers rather than the crowning, the last part of the victory lap.
Well, and you're getting to the, I think, central flaw in the Emmys in right now, which is that it's a show that's still constructed around the idea that new TV shows come on in the fall and end in the spring.
Right.
And that's not the case anymore. I'm a little bit tired today because I'm tired of giving people winners, but I gave you Ozark. So if you tried to go bet Ozark, I know that we didn't win drama, but Bateman and Garner won, obviously. But Ozark came on 13 months ago. Ozark came on 13 months ago. Fleabag came on 3 months ago, I think, 4 months ago. So they're not, it's so strange to be talking about these things as if they're in the same temporal space, because they're not. To say nothing of the fact that it's still such a cluster F of what's a limited series, what's a comedy, what's a drama, how are we rewarding for what it did. And Maisel doesn't feel like a quote unquote comedy. We have proof that a lot of these things that get nominated for limited series just come back. So it just seems like there's a lot of infrastructural stuff that's wrong with the Emmys. I think that if they fixed it, it would have a little bit more urgency, like you're saying. But right now, like the idea that, there's this stuff that's just like, oh yeah, that came out a long time ago. Whereas the Oscars, for the most part, is the end of a cycle every year,
Although that is because, and there's always talk about this every year as well, that like, because the Oscars and because the movie industry hasn't been, and forgive me for saying this, disrupted in terms of theatrical releases to the degree that almost everything else has been, the yearly theatrical release schedule, it just conforms to the award season, right?
Yeah.
Like the studios don't release their serious Oscar contenders until the fall in order to have that quick runway right up into the celebration. TV, because there's just so much of it, even if they wanted to try to pack the right part of the schedule to get the Emmy wins or nominations, they couldn't do it because everything would get swamped. So
yeah. Well, I would argue that one of the reasons why Ozark did so well last night, I think part of it is that Jason Bateman has been around for about 30 years now in terms of working in Hollywood. And I think he has a lot of goodwill in the industry in that regard. But that show came on last August, I think. And it has had a year to not only for people to catch up with it, but for them to talk about it in this way within the industry. And you could have seen, I mean, obviously not everybody who listens to this podcast lives in Los Angeles, but there was a palpable kind of Ozark push, billboards, events. I felt like that was something that they were really pushing. And in a way, I felt like Ozark season 2, they rewarded that show this year for I know people are going to snicker when we say this, the 2 seasons that it's had, right? Like instead of it being, here's one at the end of your career to sort of make up for everything we've missed, I think that is, it essentially is playing a House of Cards type role. It's a pulpy but prestigious drama.
Yes, by the way, I can confirm not all of our listeners are in Los Angeles, such as Don in Albuquerque, who spotted me at Main Attraction yesterday and was very nice about our show, but was wearing a Detroit Lions hat, which I thought was personally triggering.
Wow.
But otherwise, it was great to meet him. When I said at the beginning that this was a transitional year for the Emmys, we kind of had almost one of each type of winner in one night. Maisel is not a traditional show. Amazon is not a traditional provider. But Tony Shalhoub just sort of checking the box and winning again felt like a kind of traditional win. You're correctly pointing out Ozark's wins are cumulative and representing a kind of fondness for what dramas had become in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Ozark is in no way a traditional TV drama, but it is familiar to the people who pine for the days of basically the last decade of difficult men dramas, right?
Yeah.
And I say that not with a pejorative slant, like that's that type of show, and it fills that role really well. Fleabag just feels just incredible because, the first season was excellent. The second season was transcendentally better. And she is, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is is a comet, basically, of talent. And the show was accurately rewarded in a wonderful, wonderful way. I saw someone saying that Julia Louis-Dreyfus was robbed. You cannot be a 6-time winner and be robbed. And as much as I enjoyed the last season of Veep, Fleabag is a transcendent television show in season 2, and it deserves it in a really exciting way.
I thought Veep was going to win, but I was not surprised at all about Fleabag. Everybody who I've talked to in this city in the last 6 months, Fleabag is so far and away the sort of most talked about, most beloved show of the year.
It is, and this is a inaccurate analogy because I'm going from something very artistic and independent to something that's sort of about the business. But it's in the same way that in the 80s people were like, no one listened to the Velvet Underground, but everyone who did formed a band. I can't imagine Fleabag's ratings were that robust across the world or nationally, but everyone in Hollywood watched it and knows it's the best.
And I do think she's famous. I mean, I do think that that Phoebe Waller-Bridge has, even just her face and her personality, I think there are people who don't even know how to watch Fleabag who know who she is.
I think that's right. And I think we also had other kinds of familiar winners like Michelle Williams, who I think deserves her Emmy for Fosse Verdon, a show that I found to be kind of uneven, but she's spectacular in. So you have the sort of traditional movie star being anointed with an award. But the other way that it was like the Oscars, and this happened last year as well, it's been kind of interesting to see the writing, especially the writing in a drama series, Emmy take on some of the same role as the writing, for a film Oscar has become. Even going back as far as Quentin Tarantino winning for writing Pulp Fiction, but not directing it, and it didn't win Best Picture. The writing Oscars are kind of where the real winners win, as far as people like us are concerned. The best movies are recognized often for their script because not as often for being the best picture. And last year, The Americans won its overdue Emmy for writing, even as it lost Best Drama Series. And this year, friend of the pod, dare I say, or at least one-time guest of the pod, Jesse Armstrong won for writing Succession.
Yeah,
which is 1,000,000% deserved. Was thrilling to see. Unfortunately, the show didn't win the big one. But
I think all that's coming next year. I think Succession.
I think it might be.
Yeah, I think Succession and Maisel will be sort of the big shows next Emmys.
I don't know about Maisel. Really took a dip.
Yeah, I actually like second season, but I think that they're very specifically grinding that show out because they know what they've got in terms of attention right now.
It was interesting just in terms of the industry watching to see Amazon do so well. Netflix puts they all do, but Netflix puts a huge premium on awards.
Yeah.
For Amazon, which is, I think even they would admit, due to leadership changes and direction changes, had a spotty entry into the originals marketplace as a shinier award shelf at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was interesting.
I got to let you go because J. Smith Cameron's calling in to talk a little bit about Succession. I know. Well, this is the things you miss when you don't come on.
I'm so jealous. She is a friend of the pod on Twitter.
She really is.
It's for the best I'm not there because I would just bogart the mic and ask her about Rectify. So I get it. I get it for ratings reasons why I'm not a part of this, but please give her my very best.
We'll bring you back for fall sweeps.
A legend.
Yeah.
Listen, this is my last week, baby. We've got 4. Rosario just led the crew in a chant of 4 more sleeps. So I feel like we're ready to wrap, and then I'll be back, and we can wrap.
I can't wait. You get back to set and make sure they don't change too many lines.
Yeah, seriously. All right. Thanks, Baranskis. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye, buddy. Okay, thanks to Andy. Now let's get into my interview with J. Smith Cameron from Succession. I'm so glad that J. Smith Cameron is joining me. She plays one of my favorite characters on my favorite show, Gerri on Succession. It's a thrill to have you on The Watch. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, so last summer you gave an interview, like around the time of the first season. I think it was to Town and Country. And you said, When I go to work on Succession, it feels like a dark comedy, but then I'll see it and it's very much a Greek tragedy. Or very much like a Greek tragedy. And I was curious, with the second season, I was curious if you still view it the same way.
That's a really good question, and one I don't have a really definitive answer for. It's obviously a drama, but at least my corner of the story, I think Gerri is not an immediate family member. She's not a family member at all, but, kind of like family in some ways, and obviously very integrated into the business, but I'm able to really be out of that infrared circle of shame. So I think one reason the character is fun to play and maybe appealing for the audience is that, she's perpetually rolling her eyes about all the bad behavior involved. I think my experience on Succession has been largely different than, say, Jeremy Strong's experience.
Yeah. I guess you are outside of the Kendall zone, so that would make it the less tragic, the less pathos going on there.
Yeah, I feel like there's times that are very harrowing to work there. That if you're Frank or Gerri or Carl, obviously, if you're in Hungary and you're Carl, that's not good. But it's harrowing to work there. But I always imagine it's sort of a thrill, like an adrenaline thrill for Gerri.
In terms of when you're shooting, do you actually ever feel like when you're on set with, say, Jeremy, and he obviously is going through almost an entirely other show than the one that you are, like, is it almost like worlds colliding? Sometimes, like, when you have a dinner table scene, like at Turnhaven, or you interact with him and he's kind of has the arc that he's following and you have the arc that you follow. Do you find that you're having almost different experiences?
Yes, in a way. In the example of Turnhaven, he was on the other end of the table. So you, for instance, saw more of Jeremy than I did that night.
Right.
Except for when I watched it on TV. Like, I didn't really I wasn't privy to their conversation at all because all those conversations overlapped when we were doing them. In other words, we shot them, we covered that scene a lot. Took us a day, at least one day, maybe a day and a half. And so, except for rare occasions, there's all those conversations are going on, and with a lot of improv as connective tissue, while the other ones are going on. But the cameras are floating around and covering it. So you actually have some privacy with what your storyline is. So he did, and I did.
That must be pretty immersive, right?
Yeah, it really is, because on the one hand, it's very carefully, brilliantly written material. And then on the other hand, they, for the most part, welcome improvisation. Or after a certain point, they'll often say, like, okay, do some takes, and we'll do it a variety of ways. And they may or may not give somebody an adjustment. And then before they move on, they'll say, and this one's a freebie. Or they'll say, just mess it up. Just say just say whatever. The other trick they pull is to just leave the camera rolling. So you feel you've run out of dialogue, and in a sense, you've run out of the story of that little scene, and suddenly you have the ball. And so you have to kind of be ready for that to happen at any given time. And so that means it is ultra immersive in a whole different way, because you're kind of handed off not that they always use that, but sometimes they use it. Sometimes they use it, or they use it indirectly by it gives them ideas for something.
Because I guess you're just Gerri then, right? You're just Gerri sitting at a dinner table.
He's trying to be, yeah. And certainly that scene is a good one to pick, where it was torture for the siblings. I mean, even Roman, who is having this, like, from our point of view, comedic dialogue, is also, excruciatingly cringy and uncomfortable for most of the scene. So, again, if you're a family member, and Gerri's over there rolling her eyes and sipping her wine. So just a different experience.
Well, if that's the experience making it, which is fascinating, I didn't know that you could have these discrete pockets of stuff happening at the same time. I was curious if you could talk a little bit about how you watch the show, because you're one of the show's great ambassadors online, and I think that people feel like they both know the character but also know the performer because of that. But I was curious whether or not, are you sort of ahead of people in terms of watching? Have you watched all the episodes, or do you kind of make is there any weekly tradition when it comes to watching Succession and also watching the response to Succession?
Yes, I guess one has sort of evolved. I'm married to a writer and filmmaker who totally admires the show. And even my teenage daughter is sort of interested, but has a little trouble watching because of my storyline.
I can imagine.
It's been a little bit challenging for her. But she's even kind of, so we do watch. And then this season I saw a little bit advanced, because one interesting thing is that, for instance, take the storyline between Gerri and Roman this year. When we would shoot them, we would do every little micro beat of that several different ways. Like, we'd really explore it. So I am kind of on the edge of my seat, wondering what the final story that's being told in that scene is. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
There, because you kind of understand what Roman is after, weird as it is, right? But what is Gerri's take on it is kind of elusive, and has been sort of challenging and fascinating and fun for me to puzzle through, because I think that, I would say the number one thing that Gerri makes of it is, she doesn't make anything. I feel like the number one thing about Gerri is that she's trying to get her head around it and wondering how to handle it, which is not unlike the actress playing Gerri's problem, which is, how do I play this scene? Because in a way, she's, thinking on her feet. And so that there's these right angle turns. There's these like jackknife turns in a scene where one moment Gerri might feel bemused, and another moment kind of scared, and another moment really horrified, and just bewildered a lot, I think. Because, we haven't heard a lot about their backstory, but if I'm a godparent, I must have known them their whole lives. So it's the oddest thing in the world to imagine that. And also Gerri, as I understand Gerri, is she's so careful. She's so almost cunning about, she's a cat who always lands on her feet kind of person.
Yeah.
And so careful that she must be so wary of stepping the wrong way in these interactions.
Yeah, and she obviously has an almost institutional knowledge of the sort of, going back to adolescence, the histories of these kids. I mean, you can see that in the interactions, especially with Roman and Shiv, although obviously the relationship with Roman has gotten a lot more perverse this season. I was curious, I want to go back to, I do have a question about something you were just talking about, but I was curious, if your daughter does not care for the Roman Gerri plotline, does she have a favorite plotline on Succession?
I'll have to ask her that. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for you. I think she's known Kieran almost her whole life.
Oh God.
And so, because Kenny has worked with, my husband's worked with Kieran a lot. I've worked with Kieran. We've known them for a while. So I think she just finds, up until this wrinkle in it, I think she found Kieran's character to be a lot of fun.
So you ruined
it. I don't know. And I think all the young people like Cutting Greg.
Yes.
Because he's sort of, their ambassador.
Sure. I wanted to ask you, though, because one of the things that we've been discussing a lot with this second season, and especially as it's gone along, is, I don't find this show all too mysterious in the way you would find like Lost mysterious or whatever, but I do find that there's this ambiguity about what's transpired in between episodes and possibly what's transpired off camera between characters. Because there will be...
Right.
Yeah, and I think they've turned that knob up a little bit this season where you're like, oh, wait, so Kendall and Shiv, have they had conversations since Safe Room? Because their relationship seems to go back and forth, but how much is it theater? Do you guys on the set speculate about that? Is there a lot of information given to you about, here's everything that's happened to Gerri since the last time you've been on camera to this time? Or is it kind of more played a little loosey-goosey?
I guess I would pick the loosey-goosey answer. I happen to ask Gerri or the writing staff that's on set a lot of questions. But often I don't even put things together until I see it because there's so many. This show is more than the sum of its parts. It's one of those, which I think is one of the secrets of its success, I think, is that it doesn't over-explain. In fact, it sort of under-explains things in this way that makes the audience have to work at it and think about it and connect the dots. And I think people really respond to that. They don't like things dumbed down. That's my belief.
Oh, I agree with
you. So
I
think that's really thrilling so when I watch it, I'm sometimes like, oh, I see. Because also one thing that happens on really all the TV shows I've ever worked on, but definitely, especially on this one, is that there are often rewrites that come in, sometimes in the wee hours. And it's very hard to keep any one person's script completely. Like it's hard to stay, you can kind of track your storyline as it morphs along. But even if you read the rewrite, it's a little hard to study it and keep it all in your head because it keeps changing. Plus, you add that element, the variable of the improv. So you don't really know, there's no way to know all the content that's in it until you see it, really.
Yeah.
And then the edit, I would think it must be an interesting job for the editors because then they have to kind of tell the narrative and they all seem to adopt to this style of, a slight feeling of mystery, like you mentioned, like not all the dots are connected. And so how do they keep the thrill of that and the fun of that, but make it not impenetrable,
Yeah, well, I guess that's sort of the genius of the episode structures by having them be sort of centered around these unofficial reunions and these events rather than the way, it's like, well, here's an A plot and a B plot and a C plot and it's taking place over the course of however much time. As long as everything has to happen in this party or everything has to happen in this at this ideas conference or whatever, if you have those kinds of guardrails, I guess you can do all sorts of things.
Yeah. But I mean, just even like little innuendo that happens or little nuanced behavioral things that might happen on set. If you're not on set that day or you're in the makeup trailer when it's shot, you don't get all the tiny little micro implications. You can't really infer them until you see them because they're unfolding as it's shot, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I was curious whether or not you have been... one of the things that happened in the first season, and especially over the first few episodes, I was a very I was immediately attracted to the dialogue, and I just love the world and the story that the show is telling. But I know a lot of people sort of had to get used to the morality, let's say, of the characters. And I think that there was a likability factor, which is an interesting thing to consider. I mean, I think we'd like to just sort of be like, no, I mean, there's plenty of amazing art about terrible people. But I was wondering if for you, as somebody who probably would not particularly like some of the characters on this show if you were interacting with them in real life, whether that was ever an issue for you as an actress.
That's an interesting question. I think I have always sensed there's a little bit of a cool objectivity to, I would say, Jesse and writers and producers' outlook about the show. It's a little cold and objective. It's not. So I've always felt that they were never endorsing their behavior or their morality ever. It's always felt almost like you could almost interpret it as, exposing them instead of, asking for empathy about it. So it's almost like in spite of that strong undertow of like, oh, how disgusting all these people are, which is sort of gratifying to sense that the point of view of the show is that they're disgusting. If this makes sense. And then you get surprised by feeling empathy for Kendall or Roman.
Sure.
And I guess I just have a taste for that kind of mean funny when it's done really well. Like the first table read that I did, I was trying to figure out what the tone was of it. And I came up to Jesse afterwards and I said, is this kind of like I, Claudius?
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, that's good. I guess it is kind of.
He's like, I'll take it. Yeah.
It's kind of fun, but it's very clear all along that they're horrible. Like but it's people you love to hate,
Yeah.
but you're hating them.
and I think that probably is, to some extent, it has, I mean, it's very British in that way, in some ways, because there's a long tradition of just that scathing satire of upper class buffoons in British television and British fiction and everything else. The last thing I wanted to ask you about is, I know you are delightfully on Twitter. Really, just like one of the few good things about Twitter is your account. You share your opinions on the president, on Milky Way candy bars. I was wondering though, that was a good thread. You get really, and you had some really good people getting involved in that discussion about candy bars. And I also dislike Milky Way, so I was happy to see my views shared.
You dislike them?
I don't like them. No,
yeah.
I think there's a lot of better options out there. But I was wondering whether or not you had started to become conversant in the way in which Gerri specifically, but just the show in general, has now become sort of part of the language of Twitter when commenting on anything, from a Green Bay Packers game to something that happens on the Emmys, and people will use sort of screenshots from Succession to use it as just like shorthand. I know that Jerry's line to Roman about I have some questions, but go on, when he sort of describes, has become, I have some thoughts, but go on. It has become a real, has had a second life as a meme. Have you gotten to experience that at all?
Yes.
That's good.
Yes, it's delightful. I think that's great. I mean, I feel very lucky to play a part like this because she is some sort of outside of them enough to be. I feel like even in my original audition, where I didn't really know what was going on the sides because I didn't have the whole script, and they were referring to, I guess, looking back, the Kendall S2E takeover plan in season 1, but I didn't really understand. I didn't know what it was about because I hadn't read the whole script. But they were doing, but both brothers were being vulgar and disgusting, and I just was wincing at everything, but not like I was really wounded, but just like I was bored and disgusted. And I felt like that, that's kind of was my original take on the other characters, and that sort of everyone began to write Gerri that way and direct Gerri that way, and so it sort of evolved. And I have a feeling it's because it gives, I don't know, it's maybe, I don't know, maybe the only person that's one of the regular characters who is able to just step outside and shake her head.
Have a drink at the end of the night.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
She has a lot of self-medicating after she's had a scathing day with the Roys.
I don't think she does enough. I mean, I think, quite frankly, after one of those days, I would need some like a hyperbaric chamber full of, like deadwood opium or something. Like I really would need to relax.
Yeah, I guess you get inured to it a little bit, right?
Yeah, right. Well, Jay, thank you so much for calling in. If you're ever in town, we'd love to have you on in the studio when Andy's back.
Oh, I'd love that.
It's just such a delight to talk to you because we're such huge fans of the show and the performance.
Thank you, Chris.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to Jay. And now let's get into the audio of Number One Boys, the Succession after show with me and Jason Concepcion. You can watch that on Twitter and YouTube if you want to see Jason and I wearing open collared suits. Hello and welcome to Number One Boys, the Ringer's Succession after show. That's Jason Concepcion. Yeah. I'm Chris Ryan. This is about the return, the 7th episode of the 2nd season of Succession, and that was a bummer. Anytime you can have multiple people have their figurative throat slit on a television show, you love to see it.
Oh my gosh.
Kendall putting pound bills through the door slot.
Yeah, this will make up for it, I guess.
The victim's family that he manslaughtered.
Clearly under the influence of numerous drugs, stumbling in the night.
It was
not
just
good.
A rough scene. So we're going to buy or sell on this episode that was of the darker, less like kind of bulletin board material episodes I think I can remember, but it's still like a lot of movement. So let's do buy or sell. Jason, what are you buying?
I'm buying betrayal. What does it even mean when you are in a world, inhabiting a world in which betrayal is like with a coin of the realm?
Yeah.
Really, the thing to do is to betray somebody, and then when they call you on it, act absolutely aggrieved that they would dare suggest that you would betray them. I think that, the game that Rhea and Logan ran on Shiv is unbelievable in its audacity, and also Shiv walked into this.
It's like pre-glacier melt, Arctic Circle cold.
Just used her own desire for, recognition and her own ambition to like get a piece of something, and used it against her in the most devastating of ways, and unbelievable. Just when you think like Logan, after slapping his son in the face, can't get worse. He actually gets much more depraved and worse.
Let's just run through Logan Roy's fathering techniques.
Yeah.
Blackmails his son after his son commits murder, essentially.
Yeah.
Slaps his other son in the face after exiling him to an amusement park.
Yes.
Dangles the CEO and basically running his company to his daughter.
Yeah.
And then essentially plays mind games with her for most of the season.
And dangles in a way that felt so sincere and heartfelt at the time.
Yeah. And then as far as betrayal goes, with what you're talking about, I'm still kind of like wondering what is it? What about Marcia here? Like, is he just like, I'm out on Marcia or do you think this is all a game?
Here is what I've been thinking a lot about Logan, and here is what it is. Everyone to him is a means to an end, is a piece. What he's really great at is figuring out what that person wants and offering it up as a way to get what he wants out of them, but then never actually paying. He never pays anybody back for their emotional or professional labor.
Not at all.
Think about the contractor. The raccoons aside, he never intended to pay that guy.
Ever.
In every deal, he doesn't want to pay. And additionally, his business is his life, right? It's very intimate to him.
It's a family business.
So
exactly.
So professional and intimate relationships, that's all the same thing. And in those relationships, he never intends to offer a fair deal. Look at the way he treated Marcia. Treated Caroline, Lady Caroline.
Yeah.
It's, hey, I'll go as high as 50, but offer her 10, and it would make me really happy if you would screw her over in this. He wants to screw everyone over. That's just the way he is. In every single relationship that he has, He wants to not pay the full amount.
While still giving somebody just enough to keep them addicted to him.
That's exactly what it is. He gave Lady Caroline 3% of the business.
Yes, yeah.
He gave Marcia, clearly Marcia thought that she was in this relationship as a co-equal partner, not the case. And now that Marcia has ambitions to rise above her stations, kind of bucking the reins, let's get Rhea in there.
Be interesting. Keep in mind that line from, I think, last week when Marcia says, and our Gesties, when Marcia said to him, I know exactly who I married.
Right.
And she meant it as a compliment, but it'll be interesting to know how well she actually knows her husband. I'm buying sibling solidarity.
Yeah.
Usually Succession is about sibling rivalry, but in the very last shot of this episode, pretty much, we get what we've been looking for, which
Fascinating
is what's
moment.
been happening since Safe Room between Kendall and Shiv. And whether or not there had been some sort of breakdown in their relationship after he kind of came to her and is like, it's not going to be me, but I hope if it's you, you have a place for me. We sort of saw this, hostility between the two of them over the last couple of episodes, even through this episode.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the episode, with Rhea on the plane, with Rhea making her move, Shiv calls Kendall from her car. He's on the plane. He knows exactly, how to handle it.
Yeah.
He's not like, hey, Shiv, are you calling me? He's like, hey, they have a plan. And so what is that plan? And also now, it'll be really interesting, and people with some time on their hands can do this. I look forward to doing it myself. Going back over the last 3 episodes, if indeed this is a partnership, and rewatching their scenes together and rewatching their scenes just in general. Obviously there's a little bit of Kendall that's just going off the rails right now, but you take in our Gesties in the panel talk, and Kendall almost willingly walking into machine gun fire so that Shiv can dunk on him.
Right.
Somewhat setting her up to be the controversial hero figure in that panel talk. Was that something they planned in the beginning? Is that why they were so nervous about the 3 of them walking out there and Roman being like, I'm going to mess this up?
Yeah.
But I'm really curious about Shiv knows that she screwed up with her Rhea conversation. She walked into a trap to some extent, but how much have they been planning?
I've been picking over the "we have a problem" line. I guess on one hand, you could look at that as saying we, as in the siblings, have a problem, but I
think it's the two of them.
I love that idea that they've been, maybe in an unstructured way, Kendall has been working towards making Shiv the palatable choice for CEO.
Yeah, and you think about even the way that Shiv's voice changes when she called Kendall. It's not like, I'm calling to call you a piece of shit. I'm gonna open with some banter. It's immediately, hey, we have a problem. Is she on the plane? I think I walked into a trap. That's she gets right after it. So the Kendall Shiv thing is gonna be huge in these last couple of episodes.
Amazing.
What are you selling?
I'm selling Shiv because, man, you just can't, don't even take that meeting with Rhea Jarrell. Why? What's the up?
Especially with Rhea setting it up.
Yeah.
By saying Shiv's not as smart as she thinks she is.
What's she doing here? Why is she in England? Why is she in London at this particular time? What's the upside to taking this meeting? There's none. The idea that after being fired from PGN for essentially attempting to undercut the Pierce family, she would then have some influence with the Pierce family is laughable. Don't take this meeting.
Also, just consider the source.
Consider the source.
Why, if she's asking you for your blessing to have an affair with your dad, whether or not you care about it or not,
Unbelievable.
This is already you're on unsteady ground. So why are you walking into this? I am selling motherly love.
Oh man.
It is no surprise these people are so fucked up.
Lady Caroline, what the fuck?
When Lady Caroline is when Shiv says, who cares, Roman? It's all numbers. That's so obvious. But her just being I either get Christmas with you or I take this mansion in the Hamptons that's worth $150 million. Also, the devastating scene again is her just being we could talk about
and Kendall was
your deep emotional pain, but maybe we should just do it over an egg. Psych, I'm breaking out the back door.
Is it terrible right now? Because I'm quite tired, and if it's something heavy, wouldn't it be great to do it over an egg? It's what? Are you kidding me?
She's amazing. It's just these people are so damaged, but you can see why. And also, she's equally a part of this kind of. she's only interested in doing things to drive Logan crazy.
That's it. Her very children are merely a means to annoy her ex-husband.
Yes.
That's it. She doesn't care that they would be with her on Christmas. She just wants them to not be with Logan because that's like an expression of winning one over him.
Although she does seem to have, when she says to Shiv, like Shiv agrees with her and she's like, oh, finally solidarity after 20 years or whatever. It's like, so she does seem to have some, like maybe there's an original wound there, but for the most part, she just seems interested in screwing Logan. So, are we done with buy and sell?
Let's get rid. Yeah, I'm done.
Let's get the number one boy. I'm gonna go Rhea.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm going Rhea the way you would go for like a clearly shitty NFL team that won in week one. Like, I think Rhea is on a hot streak right now.
She's on a hot streak.
But I'm shorting it, but I'm giving her number one boy.
You know, it's kind of like, one of my favorite video games is Skyrim, and it's kind of like when you walk into a cave where all these adventurers have gone before and all their bodies are just like littered before you. Rhea is like entering this like cave of the ancients thinking, oh, I'm going to be the one that wins the CEO job from Logan Roy. And it's like that path is just littered with skeletons. She definitely won though and has acquired some part of Logan's power, but it's like, this is not going to end the way she thinks. Although, two vipers like Logan and Rhea, like clearly she is also like not going into this eyes closed and must be thinking of ways that she can also stab Logan in the back.
She's definitely also learning to speak Roy.
Oh, yeah.
Like that whole scene where they're sitting there with Shiv's memo and just eviscerating it, which is like, honestly, like, that's like anxiety dreams for me. Like,
I love the font.
It's like a bunch of my friends and family sitting around looking at my writing like,
when she is, analyzing each of the children in turn, with Logan in terms of their fitness for the CEO job, and then she's like, well, Shiv, not as smart as she thinks she is, as you said. Roman, he could actually be good. My jaw dropped.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out, like, does she really think that? Is that the show trying to tell us, look how crazy these people actually are? Like, their ways of analyzing.
Or is she trying to, like, up Roman stock? Because Roman inevitably can't live up to it.
It's like, what is the games within games? I have no idea.
Let's go to biggest burn of the week.
Oh my God.
Roman, bringing back an oldie but a Grady. Roy Boy's on tour, and we got him in all sizes, alpha, beta, and cuck. And looks right at Kendall. And, cuck, what a run for that word.
I gotta tell you, like, I'm happy for, life takes and it gives. I'm happy that this dalliance with Naomi Pierce, which can only end badly, two addicts jet setting across the globe.
Did he even, is she just still waiting for him at the zoo?
I know.
That was so sick too when he's just like, oh, I'm gonna take Naomi to the zoo. He's just like, nah, you're gonna eat shit with the people, like the family of the guy you killed.
Yes, come hang out and look at the childhood pictures on the fridge of the man that you murdered. Come do that with me.
Isn't it weird if I bring you out here and you just sit in the car like a Labrador?
No, you should come in. In fact,
what a psycho.
And look at the ruination which you have wrought upon this family.
Oh man, what's your biggest burn of the week?
It's Rhea in that talk with Logan on the jet where she's analyzing the kids and she says about Kendall, I don't know. It's like you put him in a big diaper and now he can shit himself whenever he likes.
That's actually quite appropriate.
Also, biggest burn of the week is the show Succession on English cuisine. An absolutely brutal series of owns, starting with Roman telling Logan and what he had for dinner the last time they went over there, which was 3 dusty trout for 6 people and some mustard. And then they go over and it's like pigeon. Careful, there's still some shot in the pigeon, and the shot might have pushed some feathers into the wounds.
Shot and feather.
It's like, great.
Yeah. That's the fact that they have to go to the convenience store and like load up on like Pringles and bananas before they go to dinner is pretty amazing.
And then he picks like some jar of like, who even knows what? He's like, is this actually is this actually edible? Is it actually for consumption? You put this out here so people can eat it?
This is for show.
Yeah.
What's your line of the week?
Oh man, I'm gonna go with Roman talking to Shiv saying, "Do you know nothing of the company you're supposed to be taking over? Waystar Royco, we do hate speech and roller coasters."
I'm also doing Roman when he says, when Logan says, anything you save under the 50, we can split, and Roman says, well, that ought to cover the subsequent therapy.
Who's kidding? Roman is not going to therapy.
That's actually exactly right. Let's get into Finance 101. Finance 101, you come for it, you
That's
need
right.
it, you want it. It's the advice on money from the guys who know money.
That's right.
Jason, this week we're talking about shareholders.
Right. Let's talk about shareholders and specifically voting stock shareholders. The other shareholders, those people that own stock in which you can't vote,
They don't
fuck
matter.
them.
They don't matter.
They don't
it's
matter.
actually, they actually think that they own stock.
It's
but
great.
It's actually just like a piece of bounty paper towel.
It's right. Like what I like to, when I describe that kind of stock, what I like to do is go like this and go, here, how much of it do you want?
Well, it's like I've started a lot of companies.
Right.
And I've given out a lot of stock. Like everybody on camera here right now owns a piece of my e-cig company, but they actually don't have a say in how I'm using their identities to fake medical research.
Everybody,
Thanks, Sean.
everybody in the company which we founded in Mongolia that makes, quasi-legal vape fluid.
Yeah. I
Which
mean,
is in the news
it's
right now.
technically not fluid, but that's okay.
Right. It's kind of, it's something that comes out of a rock over there. I don't know like where it comes from, but it tastes
It's
great.
it's copper mixed with
Copper-ish?
microplastics mixed with pigeon feathers.
Right. Anyway, they are mostly paid in non-voting stock.
Yeah. Congratulations. That's Finance 101. Let's get into Let Them Eat Cake, the crazy rich moment of the week.
What do you got?
Mine is just like the transatlantic largesse of the Roy family.
It's unbelievable.
So like I have family in England, and like when I go to England, there's a lot of coordination.
You're not going private jet, and you're not like, you don't have opinions on the various pilots that fly your planes?
No, I don't have opinions on my pilots. I'm not immediately going to my Knightsbridge apartment that probably costs 600 million pounds now. And then I don't also have a mansion in the country to retreat to, nor am I going to the Cheltenham races with a guy named the Ulsterman.
The Ulsterman.
Cannot wait for that guy to show up. So yeah, just like the largest. And then on the flip side is Naomi Pierce, who is a barely functioning recovering addict. I don't even know if
Recovering is doing a lot of work.
Working like out in like in Northern California, just happened to be at the biennial. And is just gonna hop over to go to the zoo with Kendall.
Has that consistently glassy, bemused look that she likes to take with her, like
There's
luggage.
two things. Can I ask you actually really quick?
Sure.
Are you worried more about Kendall's dick pic or Kendall dropping a couple 100-pound notes through the mail slot of that family?
I mean, like, it's pick your poison at this point. I think it would be the pound notes, since those speak directly to his guilt in a crime which is murder.
Yeah, it's a little weird, dude, if you show up at their house the day that your dad apologized to them, and then the next day they wake up and there's like a couple 100 pounds through their mail slot. Like, it doesn't take like
that you got
Helen Mirren in Prime Suspect to figure out where that came from.
I also just love the idea of Kendall, just absolutely smashed on cocaine and alcohol, going to like 5 different ATMs because the max you can take out is like 300 pounds or whatever.
Do you have a crazy rich moment of the week?
I do, and it's the general ability that Logan has to be like, here's a figure with 3 commas and 7 zeros in it, and I'm talking about it like I'm going to the corner store to buy like a newspaper.
It could be 10, it could be 50, it doesn't
Yeah, like 10, like let's offer her 10 million.
But that goes back to what you were saying before. It's like, at the end of the day, does he even plan on actually paying that?
No.
Does he just plan on tying people up in litigation?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
He does not want to pay. Ever. He's not paying. Logan will not pay you.
Let's get into predictions for next week. We didn't really talk about Tom and Greg's adventure this week, but there was a very small moment.
This is wind. This is wind.
That was a very big moment. There was a very small moment when Tom goes to Greg's apartment.
Thank you.
And Greg is having like a daytime meeting with a group of very well dressed, very good looking people. What do you think was happening with the Next Wave meeting?
Next Wave. I want to just say this. The B plot, the kind of like unseen Greg B plot in which he won, demands to now be called Gregory. 2 is doing cocaine. And 3 is talking to Next Wave is incredible and needs to be its own spin-off. I am going to predict that Next Wave is a Nexium-like cult.
So I love this. I
love it.
I did not pick up on this. I thought it was more like a resistance movement thing, like where it was like, Greg, you work at ATN, you could be our mole, our guy on the inside. Let's bring down like the evil. Cause he's expressed before that he's like,
very softly expressed.
His principles are against what ATN stands for, but you think it's something like...
I think it's a Nexium-like sex cult comprised of attractive young professionals who are in over their head in various ways. And I think Greg is just like a lamb with a shaved neck to people like this. Like, get him up there and let's cut his throat.
Greg is the number one boy.
Absolutely.
If that's the case, that is amazing shit. This has been Number One Boys. For Jason, I am Chris. We will be back here after the East Coast airing of next week's Succession. Catch us in the usual places. Thanks for watching.